You have bought the books, read the gardening blogs, watch the videos. You are still fighting blossom end rot in the tomatoes, blight on the beans, and something eating the corn before it tassels. Meanwhile, a woman on a steep Kentucky hillside, in 1940, with no tractor and no extension office and no internet, was putting up 200 jars from a half-acre garden every single fall without losing a crop to any of it. My name is Gideon Adkins, born outside Harlan, Kentucky. The tricks that made that possible were never written down. They were shown once and you watched and then you knew. Some of them look like superstition. Some of them are better science than anything in a gardening blog. A few of them will change where you plant everything from this year forward. 25 tricks from these mountains. What each one actually does and why it matters. Number 1. Wood ash on the beds. Wood ash is roughly 20 to 35% calcium carbonate equivalent. It is a liming agent. On a typical Appalachian soil running pH 4.8, it does 3 things at once: raises the pH, adds potassium, and unlocks phosphorus that the acidic soil had bound into forms plants could not reach. It contains no nitrogen. Nitrogen burns off in combustion. It is not a complete fertilizer. Ruth spread ash on the beds every February before the ground thawed. She did not call it liming. She called it what you do in the spring. Number 2. Ash never touched the potato patch. When everything else in the garden got ash, the potato rows were skipped. This looks like superstition. It is precise pathology. Potato common scab rises sharply in severity above pH 5.2 and is suppressed in acidic soil. The potato is the one crop that benefits from Appalachian soil chemistry left exactly as it is. Raising the pH of the potato bed invites the disease. Earl's potato rows were never ashed. Nobody explained why. The explanation is in the pathology. Number 3. Rotten logs buried under new beds. Decomposing wood buried beneath a new bed acts as a moisture sponge and slow-release organic matter reservoir, building soil depth where topsoil is thin on a slope. Chestnut was the wood most available for this after the blight arrived around 1904 and moved through the range over the following decades. Dead-standing chestnut was on every ridge for a generation. First season, nitrogen immobilization. Microbes decomposing high-carbon wood tie up available nitrogen. These beds underperform in year 1. They outperform every year after. Number 4. Manure had to sit before it went on. Fresh chicken manure is high in ammonium, nitrogen, and soluble salts that scorch roots and foliage. Aging volatilizes and stabilizes the nitrogen and reduces the salt load. Composting heat reduces pathogen and weed seed load at the same time. Standard aging was 6 months to a year. The pile was built, left, and used the following season. Current food safety guidance puts 120 days between raw manure application and harvest for crops touching soil. The manure pile behind this barn was never emptied fresh. Ruth would not allow it. Number 5. Bone and ash together, not separately. Bone meal is calcium phosphate, a phosphorus source. Applied alone to an acidic Appalachian soil, the phosphorus is immediately bound by iron and aluminum oxides and becomes unavailable. Applied alongside ash that raises the pH toward 6, the phosphorus becomes plant available. The pairing is the mechanism. Neither material works well in this soil without the other. Whether the combination was consciously understood or habitual practice does not change what it did. They went on together because that was how it was done. Number 6. Winter rye and clover on bare ground. sown in fall on beds that would otherwise sit empty through winter. 3 things happen. Rye roots scavenge nitrate before rain leaches it out of the soil. Rye releases compounds after termination that suppress small-seeded weed germination for weeks. Clover fixes atmospheric nitrogen through root bacteria. One thing worth naming honestly: rye's weed suppression also suppresses small, direct-seeded crops. Transplants go in fine afterward. Carrots or lettuce sown directly into freshly killed rye do not. This garden does not sit bare over winter. What grows in December is next year's soil. Number 7. Plant corn when the oak leaves are the size of a squirrel's ear. Corn germinates poorly below 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit soil temperature and rots in cold, wet ground. Oak leaf emergence reflects cumulative accumulated heat. It integrates total warmth across the season so far, which is exactly what governs soil temperature. This is called phenology. The oak is doing the thermometry. When the leaves reach roughly the size of a squirrel's ear, the accumulated warmth that produced them has also brought the soil to corn planting temperature. There is an oak at the edge of this garden that has told the planting date every spring for as long as anyone here can remember. Number 8. Dogwood winter, blackberry winter, locust winter. Each name marks a recurring cold intrusion in the region's spring. The plants bloom on accumulated heat, so the bloom stage reliably marks a calendar window. Frost dates shift by weeks depending on elevation, so a fixed date on the calendar is less useful than a bloom on the ridge. The critical distinction: the bloom marks the window. It does not predict cold is coming. The blackberries do not know what is coming. They mark when it usually arrives. Ruth knew when blackberry winter was by looking at the ridge, not at a calendar. Number 9. Planting by the signs. Above-ground crops in a waxing moon and fruitful signs. Root crops in the waning dark. Barren signs for weeding and brush cutting. Greer's Almanac has published this schedule from Atlanta since 1807. Blum's Almanac from Winston-Salem since 1828. The Foxfire series documented it across the southern mountains. The practice was widespread, systematic, and printed, not purely oral tradition, what no controlled trial has demonstrated. Any effect on germination or yield. Presented as what they did, not as what works. Ruth's Almanac sat by the back door every spring. This is the one trick that was actually written down. Number 10. Hardening off. Seedlings grown indoors and set directly into the ground suffer transplant shock and windburn and often fail. Gradual outdoor exposure over a week or more triggers cuticle thickening, stomatal regulation changes, and cold acclimation before the plant faces those conditions permanently. Daytime outside, back in at night, a week at minimum. The transition matters as much as the destination. Seedlings coming up in the window here do not go directly into the ground. They earn it over about 10 days first. Number 11. Plant on the hillside, not the bottom. Cold air is dense. It flows downhill at night and pools in coves and valley bottoms. Mid-slope runs several degrees warmer overnight than the floor directly below it. This is called the thermal belt. Orchards and frost-tender crops across these mountains were historically planted on hillsides for exactly this reason. Frost dates can differ by 2 to 3 weeks within sight of one another based on position on the slope. The counterintuitive rule: the cove below is colder than the slope above it. The orchard on this land sits mid-slope. Every tree went there on purpose. Number 12. Black walnut kept away from the garden. Walnut produces juglone, an allelopathic compound concentrated in the root zone, hulls, and leaves. Tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplant, and asparagus are highly sensitive. They wilt, yellow, and die. The hazard zone is not the canopy drip line. Walnut roots commonly extend 50 to 80 feet from the trunk of a mature tree. Juglone persists in soil after the tree is gone and in uncomposted walnut debris. Tolerant crops: corn, beans, squash, onions, carrots, most brassicas. The black walnut at the edge of this property sets the garden layout every season. The tomatoes go on the opposite side of the slope. Number 13. Tobacco water for bugs. Nicotine is a genuine contact insecticide. It was sold commercially as nicotine sulfate into the mid-20th century. The practice killed the aphids. It also introduced tobacco mosaic virus into the tomato patch. TMV survives curing and remains infectious in processed tobacco for years. Applying tobacco water to tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, or potatoes can introduce an incurable systemic virus into every plant in the planting. The aphids died. The crop followed. Nicotine is also acutely toxic to humans through skin contact. This is not advice. It is a practice with a real mechanism and a hidden cost nobody knew to look for. Number 14. Soap and water on aphids. Potassium salts of fatty acids disrupt insect cuticle and cell membranes. Effective on aphids, mites, thrips, whiteflies, and young scale. Contact kill only, no residual. Two things worth naming. Modern dish detergent is not soap and is more likely to burn foliage than kill pests. Concentration matters. Too strong a solution phytotoxifies leaves, especially in sun. Spray in the evening, one of the most reliable entries on this list. The mechanism is real, and the materials cost nothing. The lye soap that washed this family also went on the aphids. Number 15. Cutworm collars. Cutworms are nocturnal larvae that wrap around a stem at soil level and sever it. A collar of stiff paper, cardboard, or a bottomless tin can around each transplant stem creates a physical barrier they cannot cross. One detail that determines whether it works. The collar must extend below the soil surface, not just above it. A collar sitting on top of the ground does not stop a cutworm working underneath. Tin cans from this kitchen became cutworm collars before the kitchen was finished with them. Number 16. Toads kept, snakes tolerated, wasps left alone. Toads consume large numbers of ground-dwelling invertebrates, including slugs and cutworms. Paper wasps provision their nests with caterpillars, cabbage worms and hornworms specifically. Black rat snakes take rodents. Overturned crocks or flat stones near the garden beds provided toad shelter. These are genuine biological controls. The predation is real. One figure worth not repeating. The claim that a toad eats 10,000 insects per season is a popular estimate, not a measured value. The overturned crock by the bean rows here is not decoration. It has been a toad shelter for as long as there has been a garden on this land. Number 17. Trap cropping. A sacrificial planting at the garden edge to draw pests off the main crop. Blue Hubbard squash as a perimeter planting for cucumber beetles and squash vine borers is documented in commercial pest management. The trap row is monitored and destroyed when pest pressure peaks, taking the population with it. This is the one form of companion planting with genuine research support. Most other pairings, basil with tomatoes, most border flower claims, are not supported by evidence. The correction is built into the entry. Use the one that works and name the ones that do not. Number 18. Hilling potatoes. soil drawn up around potato stems repeatedly through the season. Tubers form above the seed piece. Hilling increases the zone in which they can develop, increasing yield. Light exposure turns tubers green through solanine production, a glycoalkaloid that is bitter and toxic. A green potato is not simply discolored. Hilling keeps the developing tubers in the dark. It also buries early weeds and improves drainage in the row. The potato rows here get hilled 3 times through the season. Once tubers are exposed to light, the damage is already done. Number 19. Why beans carried the family names and corn did not. Common beans self-pollinate with a closed flower structure. Cross-pollination rates are very low without deliberate intervention. The seed comes true to type with minimal isolation. The landrace maintains itself. Corn is wind-pollinated. It crosses freely and drifts within a few generations without strict isolation. Beans kept their names because they kept their identity. Greasy beans, cut short, turkey craw, half runners. Over 1,500 distinct heirloom varieties documented and collected through the Sustainable Mountain Agriculture Center in Berea, Kentucky. Bean seed stays viable roughly 3 years at room conditions. Must be dried to the point it shatters rather than dense before storage. Ruth's tin held varieties no catalog carries. They are named for the families who kept them. Number 20. Why hybrid seed was never saved. F1 hybrid varieties are uniform across one generation. Their offspring segregate, and the traits that produced uniformity split back out across the population and collapse. The productive parent cross cannot be recreated from the saved seed. This is genetics, not a seed company invention. Open pollinated varieties breed true because their parentage is stable. Hybrids do not by the nature of what they are. A family that saved hybrid seed was not doing something wrong. They were doing something that would not produce what they expected. The varieties in Ruth's tin replicated. The seed packets from the store did not. Number 21. Save from the middle of the row, not the best plant. Saving from a single outstanding plant narrows the genetic base and drives inbreeding depression in species that outcross. Saving across multiple average plants through the whole row preserves diversity and lets the landrace adapt to the specific conditions of that hollow over decades. This is why Appalachian landraces are locally adapted. Not because anyone understood population genetics, but because the selection practice produced that result over generations. Whether it was deliberate strategy or incidental habit does not change what it achieved. Ruth saved from the row, not the standout. Number 22. Onions that never needed reseeding. Potato onions divide vegetatively. A single bulb produces a cluster. Egyptian walking onions form bulbils at the top of the stalk, bend under the weight, and root where they land. No annual seed purchase, no germination risk, no starting over. The plantain maintains and multiplies itself. In a short mountain growing season with limited cash, a vegetable that required nothing but being left alone and dug back was not optional. There are walking onions in this garden that have been walking since before Gideon planted them. Number 23. The buried clay pot. An unglazed crock sunk to the neck between plants and kept filled with water. Unglazed terracotta is porous. Water seeps through the wall into surrounding soil at a rate driven by soil moisture tension. Dry soil pulls harder. Moist soil pulls less. The system is passive and demand-driven, delivering water directly to the root zone with near-zero evaporation loss. This technique is ancient and global. The Appalachian version is a local instance of a universal solution. On a steep hillside garden in a high rainfall climate, it eliminates both underwatering and waterlogging at once. Old crocks on this land did not go in the trash when they cracked. They went in the garden. Number 24. Water the ground in the morning, never the leaves at night. Fungal and bacterial pathogens require a period of leaf wetness to germinate and infect. Evening overhead watering extends that wetness through the entire night. The optimal window for late blight, early blight, anthracnose, and downy mildew. Morning watering at soil level minimizes leaf wetness and dries the foliage before dusk. Given 50 to 80 inches of annual rainfall and sustained mountain humidity, fungal disease is the primary limiting factor for tomatoes and cucurbits. This one habit does more than most sprays. The garden here gets watered at sunrise, at the base, every time. Number 25. The root cellar, and what could not be stored together. A cellar dug into a bank holds 32 to 40 degrees at high humidity year-round. The separation rules are chemistry. Apples and pears emit ethylene gas, which breaks potato dormancy and makes carrots bitter. Potatoes release moisture and volatiles that give apples off flavors. Onions and garlic need cool and dry, the opposite of a root cellar, and were hung in a dry loft or on a porch. Winter squash cured at 80 to 85 degrees for 10 to 14 days after harvest heals rind wounds and roughly doubles storage life. The root cellar had rules. Every mountain cellar had the same ones for the same reasons. 25 tricks. None of them appeared in a book Ruth owned. She had one almanac by the back door and a seed tin and a composition notebook of planting dates going back to 1952. The tricks were in her hands and in her eyes, and in the way she walked down a row. The reason they were never written down is not that they were secret. It is that writing them down was not how they moved. They moved from a grandmother standing in the garden to a child watching her. The child watched carefully because the garden was not optional. When it failed, the family went hungry. That kind of attention sharpens everything. Tell me in the comments which of these 25 your family still uses. Which one surprised you? What county you are in? Whether you have a seed tin or a named bean variety still on your land. I read every one. Next video. The canning method that poisoned more Appalachian families than any spoiled crop. The jar looked exactly right. I will see you there.